Just as much as quarterback Derek Carr apparently wants out of New Orleans, the New Orleans Saints should want him off of their roster. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net and Saints analyst with WWL TV. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, this Derek Carr situation keeps getting stranger and could change the way that the New Orleans Saints approach their offseason roster management moving forward, or at least it should. We'll also take a look at Shedeur Sanders, apparently not in consideration for the New Orleans Saints at the number 9 overall selection, but that doesn't mean that quarterback is out of the question. And of course, the New Orleans Saints and Derek Carr are clearly headed towards a messy split. And just as much as Derek Carr wants out of New Orleans, the Saints should want him off of their roster. We got that coming up for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time, for being here with us this time, making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. You get $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Yeah, Derek Carr might want off of the New Orleans Saints roster, but it's starting to feel like it might be likely that the New Orleans Saints want him off their roster just as bad. If they don't, that certainly feels like that's where this is headed. Like I said, this is headed towards a messy split between Derek Carr and the New Orleans Saints. Probably one of the messiest that we've seen in the franchise's history. Like, there have been those ones to where, Darren Sproles and, his wife on Twitter or on social media get mad at the team and everything like that. Akeem Hicks complaining about the team after he ends up being moved elsewhere. Even a little bit of the Brandon Cooks ending was a little messy, right? Closed mouths don't get fed. It led to a trade and all that other stuff. But even Brandon Cooks is now back, and that seems to have been patched up and doing just fine. And now all of a sudden you have this whole Derek Carr situation that's on top of all of this other stuff that's going on around the New Orleans Saints. Like, let's not forget that this team also still continuously connected to a clergy abuse scandal. They have this, they fired their head coach midseason last year. There's, all of this public discourse about its general manager. All of this stuff is also still going on. And now all of a sudden you have a quarterback that, in the middle of dealing with a shoulder injury, potentially forcing his way out of New Orleans, ending his season on a hand injury and concussion in week 14, where everybody said, hey, this is probably the end of the season. But then for whatever reason, the Saints didn't want to accept that. And we're like, no, he's working. He's trying to come back, all this other stuff. Now all of a sudden you've got Derek Carr saying at the end of the season to Kat Terrell over at ESPN that he would be more than happy to restructure his contract, which, by the way, he doesn't have a choice, right? The Saints restructure contracts. You don't get a say in that as a player. And then now all of a sudden there's conversation that league sources are thinking that maybe he wished that they hadn't restructured his contract. And all in the meanwhile, he's posting new car reviews on a YouTube page, which has to be one of, just considering the situation, one of the most tone-deaf decisions that you could make in that scenario, which is, I know all that stuff's going on, and I play for a fan base that is clamoring for its team to get back to success and has one of the most passionate, involved, dedicated fan bases in the entire NFL and in the entirety of sports. This unique, special connection between the organization and the community that is not replicated anywhere else in professional sports in this country. And yeah, all that's going on. And I'm contributing to some volatile stuff that's going on around that. But check out this EV though. Like, what are we doing? So I think at this point, if Derek Carr is truly in a situation, and I'm trying to leave it open, right? I'm trying to purposely leave this open because we don't have all the information. No one has all of the information on this. And so maybe there is something. Maybe there is a shoulder injury that's threatening his 2025 availability. Maybe the Saints didn't know about that. Maybe Derek Carr didn't know about that until after they restructured the contract. Maybe Derek Carr didn't push to get like everything that we've heard so far is like sources suggest, sources believe, or there's belief that this is the case, not that anyone is confirmed or that anyone has just outright said this is the case. And so until that, we have to be open to all the other possibilities, but the window's closing. Like the window of me being a fair journalistic, trying to keep everything open, like it's closing because the more and more that comes out, the further and further that this distances to nothing more than a messy split and a messy situation. Like a part of me believes that Derek Carr would be so much better off if he went about this the same way that a Jalen Ramsey did, right? The Miami Dolphins and Jalen Ramsey have mutually agreed to both pursue a potential trade opportunity, or a Trey Hendrickson, right? Trey Hendrickson approached the Cincinnati Bengals and requested an opportunity to go out there and seek a trade. I think they did the same thing for Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, so on and so forth. Just come out and make the trade request. Like, just make the fact that you want the trade public. Not all this other stuff, not all the other hoops. Not trying to get it done behind closed doors or whatever. If this was an attempt, I listened to Diana Rossini and Chase Daniel over at Scoop City, and they were kind of talking about like how this is out of character for Derek Carr and all this other stuff, which maybe, but like the other piece to it is they were talking about how like he didn't want to be the bad guy in the situation in terms of coming out and requesting a trade and all the other stuff. So maybe this is like the other way to do it. Stuff like that. You would have been less of the bad guy just requested a trade from the very beginning, which I think is kind of the point that they were making too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that they were trying to make excuses for him. They absolutely were not. But like, I get the logic to a point, but that point has been crossed for Derek Carr. If you didn't want to be the bad guy, then just request the trade. Everyone would have understood. And if part of your reasoning for no longer wanting to be in New Orleans had anything to do with the read you were getting from the fan base, then your read from the fan base should have also told you to just request the trade. You know what I mean? Like if part of it was like, oh, this fan base hasn't embraced me, they don't like me, I'm not welcomed here. Like if any of that feeling is there, then just request the trade. If you're not happy with the situation that you're in with the organization, you don't like the fact that the organization is already planning for the future beyond you, you don't like the fact that you're not finding the success that you expected to find with the organization. Maybe you're upset because the Saints fired Dennis Allen and you really liked Dennis Allen and you wanted to work under Dennis Allen, and now there's a new head coach coming in and you don't really vibe with that and you wanted to stick around with Dennis Allen and yada yada. Then just request the trade and leak that, make that public, not the shoulder thing. You know what I mean? I don't know. It feels like he went from trying not to be the bad guy to all of a sudden becoming a villain, because now there's all of these league people that are saying like, yeah, I'm not really so sure about the shoulder injury. And so now he's gone from being the guy with the hurt shoulder to the guy that's potentially lying about a hurt shoulder or exacerbating a hurt shoulder. And again, that's like the possibility. I'm not saying that that is the case. No one knows if it is or isn't the case. But man, that would have been a way more avoidable circumstance if the trade request would have been the thing that was just leaked in the first place. I don't want to be here anymore. And honestly, after all of this, the Maybach reviews and the, disappearing act, not being at voluntary workouts, which no one expected him to be there anyway, it all just feels so messy. And at this point, Derek Carr isn't the only one that should want out of this situation. The New Orleans Saints should too. Coming up next, if the New Orleans Saints were to make that decision, then obviously the NFL draft becomes the next place where they can land a new face at quarterback. But it sounds like Colorado's Shedeur Sanders is, as we expected, not in consideration at number 9. Let's take a look and revisit this draft class. We got that coming up for you next. We continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, the absolute best place to go when you want to experience that atmosphere of an NBA playoff game or one of your favorite events, whether that be in sports, comedy, concerts, theater, and much more. You can find it all over at Game Time today, and it's the best place to go when it comes to last minute tickets. I love being on the road, traveling, all that kind of stuff. I like the Game Time app because if I have an open evening, open up the Game Time app, let's see what's going on, and then bang, all the way up to an hour after the event, I can get tickets at a much better rate than you're going to find anywhere else. With those last minute deals, you can save up to 60% buying last minute on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. So take all the guesswork out of buying tickets today with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, family. The New Orleans Saints could turn to the NFL draft for a quarterback, but it doesn't look like one at number 9 is necessarily the route that the team will go. According to Jeff Duncan over at NOLA.com, he mentions that Shedeur Sanders, from the people that he's talked to, might not be under consideration at number 9. And Shedeur Sanders is kind of the quarterback that you expect to go at number 9, if any quarterback is going to go that high. Sure, we've seen Jaxson Dart also mocked early to number 9, but I think that seems unlikely. Like if you're the New Orleans Saints and you have the opportunity to get an immediate impact player, a wide receiver like Teteroa McMillan, a tight end like Tyler Warren, an offensive lineman like Will Campbell, a defensive end like James Pierce Jr., a defensive tackle like Mason Graham, should he fall to number 9. There's a lot of different ways that you can go to spend that number 9 selection and then come back to a quarterback later on in this year's draft, especially if you don't consider Shedeur Sanders for your organization as the future or potential future franchise quarterback of that team. Then in that case, there would be no need to take him at 9. You can move up at a later time if you'd like to, get into the bottom of the first round, see what's available for you at 40, or go back to the middle rounds, go fishing there. If nothing works out, you're probably in a good enough place to draft a quarterback next year, or because you've used your assets wisely this year, your assets for next year become a little bit more expendable than they are this year and allow you to be able to move up to go and get the quarterback that you want. So here's what Jeff Duncan had to say about Shedeur Sanders. He said, quote, I've talked to people, not anybody in a position firsthand to make this call, very important context there, but I have talked to people that say that Shedeur Sanders is not going to be under consideration at number 9. That's what I've heard. We've been saying here on this show that even though I personally would take Shedeur Sanders at 9, because I do feel like he can be a very good quarterback in the NFL if he lands in the right situation, that doesn't mean that the Saints feel that way. And that, in fact, I doubted that the Saints felt the same way that I do, which is to say that they wouldn't be considering Shedeur Sanders at number 9. So this seems to kind of back up some of the things that I've heard, some of the things that I'm feeling, and some of the just sort of signals that are pretty loudly out there if you look hard enough. And so why not Shedeur Sanders? Well, I think one of the biggest things that you're going to hear about Shedeur is going to be like the attitude, right? The confidence, all that other stuff. I don't think that's going to be something that's going to actually keep teams away from him. If they don't like what he's doing on the field, that's what's going to have the bigger impact in terms of not investing in him as a top 10 quarterback. So this would indicate that that would be the case. And if he falls out of the top 10 as a whole, it would mean not only did the New Orleans Saints feel that way, but clearly the NFL felt that way. The Carolina Panthers are begging teams to come up and trade up ahead of the New Orleans Saints at number 8 to take Shedeur Sanders because he could otherwise go off the board to the Saints at 9, and their phone's apparently not ringing. At least that's what Dan Morgan said. So when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, what you're really looking at is a quarterback that, quote unquote, lacks any physical trait, which I still don't truly know what that means. It's one of those things that sounds like it's supposed to be really smart, but it doesn't click for me. So maybe I'm not smart enough is what it is, but it doesn't click for me because he's elite in terms of his accuracy. He's elite in terms of his ball placement. He's really good in the clutch, all these other things. But look, he's not, a big time play threat with the ball in his hands as a scrambler. He's somebody that still has some, progressions to make in terms of his ability to read a football field, read defenses, make good decisions, all those other things, although he has taken care of the ball pretty well. And then, of course, there are a lot of other things that people have kind of highlighted as well in terms of just not having the arm strength, not having this, that, and the other, whatever it might be. So if those things are really present and there are fundamental things that teams don't like about what they're seeing with him on the field, on tape, then that's what's going to cause him to fall in this year's draft. We'll see where things go. Deion Sanders going out and saying, oh, black and gold, like these colors, I like these colors. He didn't say black and gold, but he was referencing the black and gold of the Colorado Buffaloes and saying, I like these colors, was like the biggest signal to me that the Saints were not in on him, because why would you give that up if that were the case? Like that sullies any relationship you would then have with the New Orleans Saints if your son was drafted. To me, Deion Sanders is a good dad, and he's just trying to keep his son from falling in the draft. So he tried to make the Saints a team to get up ahead of, and apparently no one's biting. Or at least that's what the Panthers are saying, is that no one's biting. So we'll see. It is also the draft. Everyone lies around this time of year, so we'll see where things go. Let's take a look at the other quarterbacks that could be had for the New Orleans Saints, whether that be trading back up into the first round at pick 40 or in the latter parts of the draft. Jaxson Dart, obviously, is somebody that the New Orleans Saints have been consistently connected to, and I would even say constantly connected to, to further that conversation. For me, the thing that you're looking at with that is you're looking for somebody that has some of that mobility, can operate out of the structure really well, can kind of play a little bit of that playground style ball that, has made some quarterbacks in the NFL here as of late. Kind of fits a little bit of the Jalen Hurts-esque style of play, but maybe with a little bit of maybe a better arm. But the big thing with that, I don't know about better arm, but the big thing with him is you're trying to get him away from this half-field read system of Lane Kiffin and trying to get him into a full progression, full field read system, pro style in the NFL. But great with play action, great with RPO. Those are things that Kellen Moore can scheme up in game plans with very well. He did that with Jalen Hurts. So giving Jaxson Dart, the Jalen Hurts treatment could be a way to be successful with him. The big thing is, can you get him reading an entire football field? I don't think there's a lot of quarterback coaches, head coaches, and offensive coordinators, offensive-minded head coaches, that would say no, that they couldn't get that. Like almost everyone's going to believe that they can do that for sure. Another is Jalen Milroe, who might have the highest ceiling because of what he can do with his legs. If you can help him develop a little bit in the short and intermediate areas, then you have a real opportunity to be able to kind of get him up from that. But building him up in that situation is going to take some work. But again, I don't think there's going to be any offensive-minded head coach, offensive coordinator, or quarterback coach that doesn't believe that they can do that. So what if you can get Jalen Hurts operating better in the short and intermediate areas, operating better as a passer, covering up some of the other deficiencies by giving him those play actions, letting him see the field out of play action, giving him those RPOs, and taking advantage of what you can get from his legs? I think that's massive in terms of what you can get there. And so he becomes an intriguing option in the second, third, fourth rounds. Kyle McCord out of Syracuse becomes another one, pro-style player. The big issue with him just comes down to like when he sinks, he sinks. And like you go back to that 5-interception game against Pitt, but when he flies, he flies. And so can you get the better consistency out of him as a pro-style quarterback without the legs that help him move? Tyler Shough has some ugly stuff on tape when he's under pressure, put some ugly stuff on tape during the NFL Combine as well, but is somebody that everybody considers to be a potential day one starter. And a big reason why is that he's got a big arm, he's got NFL size, he reads the field, he makes good decisions. So we'll see where things go, but those are the players that I think make sense for New Orleans. It's funny to talk about Jalen Milroe as the most intriguing, to talk about Tyler Shough maybe as the most pro-ready but risky, and then to talk about Jaxson Dart and Kyle McCord somewhere in the middle. That kind of feels like where all this is going, but we'll see exactly which way the New Orleans Saints go. I've always been getting warmer and warmer and warmer on the idea of taking that flyer on Jalen Milroe, but I don't know if the Saints are going to want to go that way with their new coaching staff, right? So we'll see where things go. But Jaxson Dart feels like a good fit, trading up into the back of the first round or potentially take him in the second. All seem possible. Coming up next, this Derek Carr situation stands to potentially change the way the New Orleans Saints approach their off seasons. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is absolutely the place that you should go, especially if you're a small business owner. You know that the clock doesn't stop for you just because you quote unquote clocked out at 5. That's why you got to go to LinkedIn. They'll make sure that you're getting all of your job postings in front of that incredible network of people that use LinkedIn to try to find their dream jobs. Put your dream job up in front of their eyes with LinkedIn. You can also use their hashtag hiring frame, just to kind of help signal boost a little bit that your job is hiring. That'll help to bring and attract some folks over to you. You can even use some other interesting tools that'll even help you write job description so you're not by yourself trying to get all of this stuff done. There's a ton for you to check out over at LinkedIn Jobs. It's going to help you be able to get your job in front of the right eyes. Post your job for free today at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. This marriage between the New Orleans Saints and Derek Carr could be heading towards a messy divorce. And if that's the case, this stands to maybe change a little bit about how it is that the New Orleans Saints approach their roster building, approach their offseasons, and maybe even approach their money management. Now, I know I'm kind of punching above my weight class here when I say stuff like this, because the New Orleans Saints are going to do what the New Orleans Saints do, right? They're going to restructure contracts. They're going to kick money down the road. They're going to push money into future years. They're going to use void years. They're going to do all of this stuff. But forgive me for a moment while I wonder if a situation like this, which is not about an injury impacting a player to the point to where they don't live out the life of their contract the way that you expected. It's not about a player aging out of their contract and staying on your books after they've retired, a la Drew Brees. It's not about a player being, getting a really good trade offer and you parting ways with a player because the value's so good that you're okay with some of their restructured money living on your books a little while longer, a la Marshawn Lattimore. This could potentially be a player that is just so disenchanted with you or so disenchanted with the player that it leads to this kind of nasty split that could be on the way for the New Orleans Saints and Derek Carr. Again, with the information that we have available to us, we presume that could be the case. I wonder if this makes the New Orleans Saints kind of rethink going to the free agency market and giving a 9-figure contract to a quarterback. I wonder if this makes the New Orleans Saints rethink restructuring contracts constantly and pushing money into future years. I think that practice really and honestly kind of got away from New Orleans during the pandemic, and then they had to keep doing it kind of in order to stay afloat. And now they've kind of been working their way out of it over the course of the past couple of years. But now your concern has to be, does this move with Derek Carr just kind of extend this whole situation of needing to restructure, needing to push money down the road, not having as much salary cap money to spend, all that kind of stuff? Does this end up pushing into next year? Now, I assume that if the Saints knew that there was a possibility that Derek Carr wouldn't be on their roster in 2025, that they restructured him with a plan in terms of how they intend to manage that money going into 2026. Again, it might be why they're carrying such a massive surplus of money, almost $28 million right now, still available in salary cap space for this team, that they could potentially try to roll over a portion of, at least, into next season. Maybe this is a part of that management. Maybe this is a part of what it is they're trying to do there. I'm not sure. But I think that this maybe influences or impacts a little bit, maybe highlights the downfalls, the pitfalls to this kind of roster management and money management. And I just wonder, is it enough to make the New Orleans Saints a little bit more cautious about the contracts that they restructure? Is it enough to influence the New Orleans Saints to maybe not try to keep that competitive window open without first closing and reopening it, right? That's the other thing that I think this has such a major impact on, is the Saints' kind of intent. Some would call it stubbornness. I don't think stubbornness is always negative, so I'll say stubbornness too, of saying like, I'm going to put together a team that competes. There are days where I'm sick and I am too stubborn to say, I'm not going to do a show today. That's not going to happen. I'll do a show from the hospital bed if I have to. Like, I'm that kind of stubborn. I think the New Orleans Saints are that kind of stubborn, right? Always want to show up, always want to compete. And it's gotten them into some tricky situations. It's gotten them into some bad situations, if we're being completely honest. And this situation could become one of them, or at least magnifies what that is. So I wonder if this is enough to make the New Orleans Saints kind of go, you know what? We don't have to take a step back to take a step forward. We could just take a smaller step forward and say, we're not going to go and sign the big veteran to come in and try to help this team for 2025. Figure out what we got in one of these younger guys, right? That could be what they're saying. I'm not saying we in that context, but I know I'm not the one that actually has to do it. But, I wonder how much a situation like this, if this does end as poorly as it sounds like it's about to end, if this does end as loudly as it's about to end, if this does end as volatile as it looks like it's about to end between the New Orleans Saints and Derek Carr, if it just changes certain things around them, the weight of the contract that they give out to players that maybe are punching under that contract value, the consistent restructuring of most contracts, the consistent need to push to compete as opposed to waiting to reload, right? Like you think about a person in battle or something like that, right? Like if you're in battle and you're trying to push on the enemy, but you're out of bullets, you're probably going to reload first. You're not just going to go charging ready to try to melee somebody with the weapon, right? And so I'm probably the last person that needs to be giving combat analogies, but whatever. I wonder if this type of situation, this kind of unprecedented situation, ends up kind of nudging the New Orleans Saints in a direction that is maybe one of a little bit less of an aggression, a little bit more of a conservatism, a little bit more of a selfishness, a little bit more of a protect yourself as an entire organization when it comes to all this. I'm very curious if these conversations will happen between Gail Benson, the owner, and Mickey Loomis, the general manager, about where to maybe pull back a little bit, not to the point where you're actively walking your franchise backwards, but to where maybe every now and then you just take a half a step instead of trying to take a full step, right? Maybe you sing you sing at half volume instead of full volume. Maybe you mark your dance routine instead of going all out, like whatever the analogy is that works for you. Like, I wonder if something like this what could be not catastrophic in that it has this long-lasting impact and the Saints will never compete again. I don't think that they're about to enter that realm, but catastrophic just in terms of like the amount of attention that's going to come to this, the amount of noise that this is going to make. Like if this truly goes and ends poorly between the New Orleans Saints and Derek Carr, I just wonder, will this force this team to rethink a little bit, just a little bit, about what some of their offseason approaches might be? I certainly would be tempted if I were the New Orleans Saints to at least have that conversation either with self or with the people that are the decision makers. Coming up in tomorrow's episode, we're going to continue to track this story every way through. But one of the big things that happened earlier today was our Saint Squad show. So make sure you go and check that out. Hour long, myself, Dylan Sanders, John Hendricks from Athlon Sports, as well as former New Orleans Saints wide receiver Lance Moore. We broke down everything, what this means for the New Orleans Saints, why the Saints could potentially be better off after this, or how they can get to kind of the better off place after this, what quarterback they should turn to, and what they should do next, whether it be the draft, free agency, whatever it might be. We broke down all of it. It was a super fun conversation, and I think a really informative conversation, especially Lance Moore's point of view as a former player. So make sure you come through for that as well, and come and check us out over on the Saint Squad every Monday and Thursday morning, excuse me. Appreciate you very much, as always, making us your first listen and making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jaxson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how your mom and them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.